So good morning and welcome to HammerCon 2024. We are super excited to have you here this morning. I am Colonel Riedel. I'll be your MC for the main track. So we have 3 tracks, so if you take out your information out of your goodie bag that you have there, it kind of gives you the rundown of what our program is going to be for today. So with our 3 tracks, we have the core track, the nerd track, and the Get track, which is the growing innovations in tech, which I'm told that's the best track. I was told to say that, so it is the best track. So again, welcome to HammerCon 2024. Definitely want to thank Joe and Christine for allowing us to put on this event for our military community. Let's give them a round of applause. So what I want to do is challenge you just a little bit. So within our military community, we do a lot of hard work. We do good stuff. So one of the things that we're probably not the greatest at is making sure that we're communicating with each other and not remaining in our silos. So this is a perfect opportunity to work as a team, get to know some other agencies, get to know some other services, so that we can really have the crosstalk that we need. So super excited that we get the opportunity to do this. So I'm told that I have one job, and my one job is to keep us on track. So I've got Stephanie here in the front, so I will say that if you see Stephanie, her job is to kind of herd us back into making sure that we're on track. So let's make sure that we do that. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. At this time, we'll have the national anthem by Staff Sergeant Alexus Monroe. She's a vocalist in the Soldiers Chorus, U.S. Army Field Band, followed by remarks by Dr. Brad Sims, President of Capital Technology University and MCPA advisor.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right. Can you feel the excitement? Yeah. Welcome to Capital Technology University and HammerCon 3. As a supporter of the MCPA, Capital Technology University has been a supporter since 2020. I believe Capital Tech has been a great connection to the start of HammerCon, which started here several years ago. We have a lot in common with the mission of MCPA. Capital Tech is a STEM-only university, founded October 9th, 1927 in Washington, D.C. by a Navy veteran and radio operator. He wanted to teach people how to build radios and how to use electronics. We moved out here in the 1980s to this location. We maintain that industry focus in all of our degree programming today at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level. We only offer industry-friendly degrees in STEM or management of STEM areas. No. I'll just talk louder maybe. We were the first in many areas to focus on cyber-related degrees as well. So we started a master's degree in information assurance in the late 90s, and it grew in popularity after 9/11. We've been the first in many other degrees. We offered the first PhD in offensive cyber engineering. We offered the first doctorate of science in cybersecurity in 2010. We recognize the need for cybersecurity protection. In 2018, we started offering critical infrastructure degrees at all degree levels, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, to help focus on operational technology. We're the first MS and PhD in cyberpsychology offering in the United States. And anybody who knows Dr. Bill Butler, he is the first vice president for cyber science outreach and partnerships for any university in the nation. And he works here with Capital Tech. So if you see him floating around, say hi. And staying up to date, Capital Technology University now is the first university in Maryland to offer AI degrees at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level as well. We understand the importance of that and how it will be integrating with cybersecurity. We have expanded to many other areas, not only space cybersecurity, but today we're a comprehensive university offering degrees from aviation, where you can be trained as a pilot, to counterterrorism, to global intelligence, to facilities management, uncrewed systems, and a plethora of other industry and demand degrees that fit within the region. As you can imagine, many of the three-letter agencies and government subcontractors come to us to hire our students or for their employees to go ahead and obtain an advanced degree. We use technology to expand our degree and educational offerings in these high-demand fields. So for the master's and doctoral degrees, they're completely online, designed for full-time working individuals that can complete these degrees while they're working at their current location. The bachelor's degrees may be more on campus. There's a few online. But just to show you our commitment to our degree areas in technology that we offer for the undergraduate students, we guarantee them all a minimum starting salary of $52,000 a year and a job in 90 days in their career field. I believe today you'll see the success of HammerCon has grown over the last few years and is probably outgrowing our facilities as it goes in the future. We will continue to support the MCPA, and we have since 2020 with offering the MCPA members the deepest discount in tuition. We offer members a 25% tuition discount. As of today, members have saved over $460,000 in tuition that have been completing our degree programs. One MCPA member in particular walked across our stage a couple weeks ago with their PhD in cyber leadership. That is the founder of MCPA, Joe Billingsley. On behalf of Capital Technology University, I want to thank you all for your service for this great country. And I want to thank you and have a great time here at HammerCon 3.
Sir, just a little something for you. Thank you so much on behalf of the MCPA.
Thank you.
For allowing us to have a seat.
He's also a current student.
Okay, awesome. So next we'll have Brigadier General Novotny. General Novotny is the Director of Intelligence and Cyber Effects Operations for the National Guard Bureau. The former Deputy J5 at U.S. Cyber Command is responsible for developing and implementing the strategic vision, plans and policies for cyberspace operations in support of national security objectives. Sir?
Thank you. Okay. Hello. Testing. Hey, I just said I'm glad they said my new title because I just changed jobs 2 weeks ago, and I didn't really remember it. So, and of course I'm in the Air Force, so they don't give me business cards. So Chris, thank you for allowing me to be here. Joe, thank you for allowing me to be here. Pixie, 5 minutes. Hold your hand up. I was told 5 minutes is enough. But I'm super pumped to be here. Good to see. Old friends, new friends, current friends, friends that we will join forces, I know, in the future. I want to talk a little bit about kind of my career as I've gone through cyber over the last almost 25 years. I know I'm not the oldest person in here. I'll say I'm in the mid part of my career. I want to continue to serve in some capacity. But it's been such an exciting time to be a part of this birth of what we consider cyber right now. And I want to tell you that this organization is going to support you no matter where you're in your career, right? So if you're at the beginning of your career, middle of your career, nearing the end of your career, this organization will support you because they are a great organization to support all of us who do cyber. It doesn't matter how you support the mission of cyber in our military, they are here to support you. All right, so with that being said, I got a couple of anecdotes. You know, my first duty location was down in Louisiana. And I have some friends that were stationed there with me at that point. And this is the one story that I love telling is this was during when the Air Force was bringing together our CERT and our NOSC and all the different capabilities of the Air Force. And we brought it together at Barksdale Air Force Base. My Colonel Ted Campbell, looked at me and said, "Lieutenant, the Air Force networks were just infected by Code Red." And I was like, "Oh, this is great." He's like, "You need to call the Pentagon and tell them the Air Force networks were infected with Code Red." So this is like circa 2002, 1, 2. I don't know, when did Code Red come out? Someone remember? About that time, right? So I called the Pentagon Ops Center, the NMCC, and I said, "This is Lieutenant Novotny. I just want to tell you the Air Force networks were infected by Code Red." And this major picks up the phone and goes, basically, "I think you have the wrong number," and hangs up. All right, I did my job. Message delivered. What a great transition we've had since 20 plus years ago. From there, went up to DISA, got to be a part of organizations called JTF CNO, JTF GNO. I know we have alums out there that evolved into what is Cyber Command at this point. And I specifically remember as a captain having this conversation with a lawyer, a cyber lawyer there. And the question was, what does an act of war in cyber, what is an act of war caused through cyber? What is that? Like, how do we define that? This is 20 plus years ago. Have we figured that out yet? Do we really know? Or is that continuing to evolve at this point? It's continuing to evolve, in my opinion. And just coming from the Cyber Command, I know that even the floor of cyber activities that happen in Russia, Ukraine, has changed the definition of what an act of war means in cyberspace. This is why it's exciting times, I think, to be in any part of your career doing that. Went out to Misawa, saw some Misawa friends in here. Misawa, anyone been stationed in Misawa before? Yeah, a couple friends, yeah, that's good. It's an awesome location. It's the real Air Force, the real Army, the real Navy. You've heard this before, right? We have F-16s that take off every day. And they go around in circles and then they land, right? They take off again, they go around in circles, they land. So it was great. I was a comm squadron commander there, and I would tell my airmen, there's only really two real missions here. One is NSA, right? What they were doing. They were providing intelligence to the president every day. And then the other one was a Navy intelligence mission, right? And they were flying off the coast, doing things. And I would say that not in front of my boss, who was an Air Force guy, but like the F-16s were training. They were training. They were not doing the mission of the department every single day, and obviously training is part of our mission. But it was just a different mindset that I think we are moving toward, because our next conflict, if we go to war in Indo-Pacific, it will be fought. A lot of it will be fought by things that are enabled by cyber, right? We will have our kill chains that are out there. We'll have to enable those. We will have unmanned, name your platform, that will be out in Indo-PACOM. But what it will be, there's no doubt in my mind, what it will be cyber professionals in this room helping that warfight. It'll be very important. So that is, Reid's 30-second history. How much more time do I have? 1 minute? Yeah, 1 minute. All right. I'll clean this all up. So this is what I'll leave you with. There is so much to do in this space that we need your thought leadership on, and we need MCPA's thought leadership on. If we have a naval vessel coming up Baltimore Harbor from China, I'm pretty sure our Navy, our Coast Guard is going to stop that. Just stick with me for a second. If we had an airplane, minus a red balloon, if we had an airplane from the PRC flying over the U.S., I'm pretty sure we're going to stop that as the military, as the Department of Defense. Now, if we had a tank driving into L.A. From the PRC, I'm pretty sure we're going to stop that. But use that equation in cyberspace. If we had malware in an electric plant that's going to turn off both dual use, right? A hospital and also Fort Bragg, or sorry, what's the new name? Liberty, yes. All right. Liberty. And we can't get forces overseas, right? China is going to make an effect through cyberspace. Does the Department of Defense go into the electrical power plant and do some type of activity there? Do we have the authority to do that? Can we do that? Are we going to do that? Is it DHS? Is it FBI? Is it commercial industry? Is it all the above? You all will have to figure that out. And then the last thing is the sense that when we buy airplanes from Boeing, we don't also buy the air domain. But when we buy cyberspace from Amazon, Google, or Cisco, or whoever it is, we actually are in bed with that industry for the entire time, because cyber is enabled with our industry partners. And that's why I'm glad to see so many industry partners out here. So with all that being said, my actual job was just to be the warm-up for Chris. He is our first president of this organization, which I'm super excited that he is. And reading his bio over again last night, I think I really understand why you are the first president, because he served on active duty in the Navy, was in the reserves in the Navy, was the CISO for the Navy, was the principal cyber advisor for the Navy, has been in the industry field. So look at all these check marks that he's had. He's had cyber from every single aspect, really, that this organization represents. So I think our team did a great job in selecting you as our first president, and I'm super proud to be your intro act. So Chris Cleary, come on up here.
All right. I got to start with this. All right. That is a real hammer. That'll lay some damage down, by the way. And this is sort of the symbol, always has been, always will be, the symbol of the organization. And very quickly, a hammer, and we got to the Order of Thor and all that, something that can create and destroy, which is sort of the crux of what we talk about as military cyber professionals. Reid, thank you very much for the intro. I'm actually very, very happy to see my replacement, the second principal cyber advisor for the Department of the Navy, Anne-Marie Schumann, to join us today. So thank you for taking the time out, and I can't wait to spend some time with you afterwards. Look around the room. This is sort of the who's who of the community, of us, of what it is that we do. The people that built this community, many of them are in the room. The panel that we have, the lineup that we have today is really impressive. I'm going to run through some slides very quickly, and then I'm going to give you some of my rant, which I can do a little bit more freely now that I'm sort of unconstrained by sort of the bounds that I had in my last position, and then we'll get kicked off. So, clicker. See, you never work with Tech Live. This is China already trying to degrade what it is we're trying to do here today. Here we go. All right, it's working. All right, first and foremost, I just want to get kicked off by thanking all the people that got us here. If you would have looked at this list a couple years ago, there was not nearly as many symbols and logos and organizations represented as there are today. The organization is really getting recognized. It's really beginning to build its credibility in the space. Again, Joe, a lot of this goes back to your vision and sort of founding this organization in the first place and the hard work that you did personally to get us where we are. So we're in the third HammerCon. Oh, let's go back to the beginning, right? So I don't know where Joe found this picture of me 50 pounds ago on that when I was giving a talk at, that's at DEF CON the day I left Cyber Command in 2011. That was like literally 2 weeks after I'd left the organization to give this talk. There's Joe up as captain, Billingsley, and again, in the beginning when this idea was just getting kicked around. So once again, to sort of go back to that this is just a product of us. You know, we are the ones that created this. And I don't mean we, Joe and I mean we, everybody in this room, because this is really what it's all about. At the end of the day, it's about us. Our foundation, look, our mission and our values as represented up on the slide, I can't imagine there's a single person in this room that would disagree with any word that's written up there. You know, for the most part, this is all very blocking and tackling for everybody in this room because of the organizations that we all came from, regardless of service branch, serving in the military, supporting the intelligence community, whether in or out of uniform. I mean, this is what underpins almost everything that we do, which is what makes it so easy participating with a group like everybody represented here, because we all reflect these common values. Again, it's basics for us. The organization. So I'll land here for just a minute just to talk about some of the blocking and tackling of the organization. So we're a 501c3, we're a charity, we always have been, we always will be. A small board of directors, mostly represented, we're all here today, Joe and Christine and Joe and myself are represented here today. We've been sort of carrying the water for this since the beginning. When we say robust board of advisors, I imagine everybody here at one time or another has gone to the website and seen the list of advisors that we have. It's impressive. It is the who's who of who not only created this community, but most notably the people that are driving the vision for it. There are people still in uniform that are representing, and then there's people in the past. General Davis is one of my mentors when we were at Cybercom together back in the day. It's impressive. We had our first meeting last night. Our first meeting that is going to be now the meeting that we have prior to every HammerCon moving forward. And we had a really interesting discussion, debate, small arguments every once in a while, but that's the genesis of these meetings. You know, like one of the things that we can clearly say, and trust me, there's another slide I'm gonna sort of land on for a little bit and spend some time there. If we can say anything, we have not agreed to what this community is, what the ambiguity that lives in whether it's policy or doctrine or within each of our respective services, you know, what's the career path, what's the future. There's still so much work to be done. And the thing that I like about that, and I'll probably say this again, is when I was talking to junior officers in my old job, and I think we all do this, is to say, look, the book has not been written yet. For anybody that comes into this mission space right now, look at a midshipman in the front row. There is a midshipman that can still modify this community moving forward. But if we were talking about undersea warfare, aviation, land maneuver warfare, those things have been pretty much in stone for, in some instances, hundreds of years. The technology's improved, but for the most part, the doctrine and the way that we're going to employ those forces hasn't. This world, we're still just figuring it out. Again, regional chapters, I'm going to show a slide on the next slide. For those of you outside of events like HammerCon, there is a robust group of regional chapters that have stood up. Strangely enough, the most aggressive one, the one that's shown the most promise, is in Minnesota. The Minnesota chapter. Hats off to those guys for standing that up. I've got to get out there and see what they're doing, because the last time I looked, I didn't know there was a lot of cyber in Minnesota, but you know, God bless them for the work that they're doing. We've got a national capital region, there's a Fort Meade region, there's a Colorado region, the cyber warfare engineer in the community has their own collective. So this is impressive. And again, we're now at over about 4,500 members, which is important because this is another thing we talked about at the Board of Advisors meeting. We don't let just anybody into the organization. There is a vetting process. This is for us. This is the military cyber professionals with its one degree of deviation on either side. You know, not to say that you had to have only served in uniform in the cyber community to do this. There's government professionals that have worked at our intelligence communities and at cybercoms. So there's a whole sort of breadth and scope of what we identify as the community: offensive, defensive, DOTANOPS, intel, capability development, all of that. That is all part of this community. Oh, I went backwards. our chapters, which I've already sort of hinted on, but look up there, see where the chapters are. And for those of you who are potentially in an area where there is no chapter, weapons free. We are looking to incentivize anyone in any place geographically or, sub-communities. Like I said, the cyber warfare engineers have their own little community that they get together, which is completely encouraged. So anybody, anywhere, that if you don't think there's representation for the group or the organization, please feel free to reach out to Joe or I and start creating your own community of interest, your own chapter. We are completely open to that. All right. The things that you've most seen the organization be visible for, and it's the things that have underpinned the organization to this point. The recognition that we do, the Order of Thor Award. As we'll be presenting some Order of Thors later today. We presented one last night to Thomas Pena for all the work that he's done creating the periodicals, which is sort of also represented on the slide. But this is the way that we recognize us. Again, the Order of Thors, we also ask the chapters, we ask the groups, we ask the Board of Advisors, the Board of Directors. If there's people that we believe should be recognized for the work they've done, anybody in this room can nominate somebody for recognition through the Order of Thor program. Please do that. And as the program gets more traction, like anything else, we're hoping that the MCPA is recognized and that Order of Thor over the years gets recognized as the things that people in the community are really looking for to be the recognition moving forward, because we don't have our own thing yet. We'll get it. We know there's the FCAs, there's the NDIAs, there's those other communities, Association of the Old Crows. Those are all great. And those have all sort of spilled into the cyber area because it makes sense for FC and those organizations to begin to kind of take another step forward and do things that are cyber. But this is what we're trying to carve the MCPA out as being a little more special, a little more different, to focus specifically on this as a profession. And I think there is something to be said for what does it mean to be a profession or a professional in this space. What is the thing that this community will do better, faster, be looked at as the leaders or the only people that can do these kinds of missions, functions, and tasks. Not just, fix my computer, right? Where's Ian? The Microsoft guys, right? Not just, why does the radio not work? But hey, particularly with what General Novotny said, hey, phase one, is phase one a kinetic fight or is phase one a non-kinetic fight? Hey, information warfare community and the other services, you're first at the bat. And I think that's something we got to think of and continue to drive. All right, here's what I want to kind of land on this slide just for a minute, because at the end of the day, I think this is the thing that we're not necessarily struggling with as an organization. I think the MCPA understands its vision to do just this, right? But more importantly, what is the vision? What is the culture of our community? This was a big point, and General Davis actually brought this up specifically. One of the things that we should probably focusing on a lot more is what is the cyber culture? What does it mean to be a cyber professional? How do we contribute to the overall force employment with our respective services? What is the career, again, I'm looking at the midshipman again, what is the career that the midshipman's going to follow for her next 20 years when she decides to go, hopefully, a maritime cyber warfare officer or cyber warfare engineer? But on that same note, and not get, unfortunately, drafted to be a nuclear engineer because the submarine community is hurting, right? In the Navy, it's unquestionably one of the Navy's core competencies is undersea warfare. That is a no-fail mission for the Navy. And they'll find qualified people and say, hey, I know you want to be a cyber person, but this is what we do. Sorry, you're going to be a nuclear engineer. When does it get to the point that they say, whoa, look at our staffing for cyber warfare officers is not where it needs to be. Hey, I know you wanted to be a pilot, but we're pushing you over to be a maritime cyber warfare officer or a 17X series in the other services. When does that begin to happen? And I think really at the end of the day, it's this community that is going to drive that home. Now, for anybody that's heard me really get on my rant, and I don't know how ranty I'll get here, how much time do I have left? That would be the important piece. 30 minutes. Oh my God, I could talk forever with 30 minutes. So, all right. Well, then let's go there for a second. All right. So we have the time. We have the time. Right. So there's a slide that I guess I should have put in here, because one of the things I don't think we do well as a community is tell a good story. Right? I don't think we're making the argument to our leadership as to why these things are important. Now, I was a history major at the Naval Academy, not by choice. Failed calculus, so I really wanted to graduate. I played a little too much rugby, and I said, well, let's be a history major, and I read a lot of books. And it wasn't until 20 or 30 years later that I was like, oh my God, some of those things I read in those books, I get it. I get what they were trying to push forward. So what I mostly do is I try to take things that are easily digestible and have all sorts of cyber analogies that go along with them, right? And there's 3 books that I like the most that I think, when strung together, tell a very interesting story. See, Barrett's already laughing because he already knows. Look, there's 10% of the people in the room that have already heard this and are like, oh, here he goes again. He's going to do the Bomber Mafia story. Well, I am. I'm going to do the Bomber Mafia story. The 3 books, when strung together, are The Bomber Mafia, written by Malcolm Gladwell, Moneyball, written by an author. An author wrote that book. A well-known author wrote that book. And it's a good movie. And another book called Execute Against Japan. The first book is sort of a visionary tale of what we could be. The next book is really the value proposition of why this is important. And then the third book tells a little bit of a scary story of, again, why we might want to take this seriously. All right, so Bomber Mafia. Anybody in the audience read Bomber Mafia? I've said it a million times. You got to listen to it on audiobook. That's really the way you need to digest it because it's Malcolm Gladwell narrates. It's just an awesome listen to. And actually, strange enough, for any of you who have Apple TV, I was watching it last night because my wife's on visiting my daughter, so I could, which was Masters of the Air on the Apple TV. That's an awesome miniseries. You can spend time with that. It talks about the 100th Bomber Group and their efforts over Germany. But anyways, what the Bomber Mafia story is about a group of young pilots in the early 1900s that sort of had a vision of what the airplane could be. But in the early 1900s, the airplane was still just a toy. It was just something made out of balsa wood and canvas and wasn't really taken seriously as a credible weapon system. And there were lots of things going on in the early 1900s that we were struggling with as a military organization to try, understand, and leverage new technologies. In this instance, most notably the airplane. But what they envisioned was basically observing what happened in World War I, most notably with the Battle of the Somme, where 1 million people were killed over 3 days for no strategic gain, just a meat grinder. And what they said is, look, if we had a thing that could fly over these big battlefields and really deliver munitions on warfighting capacity of our adversaries, well, maybe that ultimately could lead to coming to the table, suing for peace because you weren't able to produce the things that you needed to continue the conflict. So what they had come up with, this idea, was daylight precision high altitude bombing. But in the 1920s, there was nothing that existed to do that. And over the next 20 years, you saw the development of several bomber types leading to the B-17 and the B-29 and the development of the Norden bomb sight. Because what these pilots believed in their soul was that if I could master this platform, it could fundamentally change the face of warfare. And it wasn't to say that air, like we've heard the stories before, that air, we don't need other things, air power can solve everything. Again, not saying that's true. They weren't saying it was true. But it was certainly something to be developed. And they tried to. But what happened was the Norden bomb sight never worked the way people really thought it could. And why is that? Something interesting you learn in the book is that in 1945, nobody knew that the jet stream existed. Nobody knew that at 39,000 feet, there were winds of up to 200 miles an hour. So how do you drop a bomb from that altitude with accuracy going through those kind of winds? Nothing could anticipate it. So what they did is they moved away from this idea of precision bombing. Enter Curtis LeMay, enter the B-29, flying sorties out of Guam that flew low with napalm and just started burning the cities to the ground. But the punchline of that book was they didn't give up on it. And today, if you think about it, the precision delivery of munitions is the only way that we do it. We didn't give up on it. We figured out how to do it. And the other technologies were developed to enable it. When I read that book, I kind of feel like we're there right now. There's certain technologies that we all believe in. We are the cyber mafia. That we believe these things are possible, both offensively and defensively. So I'm not just making the argument that it's a completely offensive fight. But they really haven't been proven yet, right? The other communities still are not ready to push the believe button that this community can deliver the things that it's promising to. Again, both offensively and defensively. General Novotny last night, I think I'll steal your words, where it was, offensive cyber might not win the next war, but if we don't get defensive right, it could certainly prevent us from winning the next war, right? And that's something I think we all, the defenders in the room, certainly know that. Okay, so that's the belief system. That's the where could we be? Could we develop tools? And I'll use offensive in a case that, if one instance was precision, daylight, high altitude, could we make tools that are credible, synchronized, and on call, right? Maybe that's a North Star for the people in the offensive side of the world. Can we do those kind of things? All right, Moneyball. So my last job, Anne-Marie, take 1 or 2 notes if you feel like. My last job and Anne-Marie's new job is all pretty much fighting for budget. You know, when you live in that big 5-sided building and you see all of these things racked and stacked against each other, sometimes it's hard to find where the cyber dollars are. It's really easy to find where the submarine and the airplane and the B-21 dollars are and the base dollars are. Those are easy because those are billions and billions of dollars. They're easy to call out. It's harder to find necessarily where the dollars for this space is. Okay, so then you got to make kind of an argument for it. And this is one of the things that I love about the Moneyball book, right? And the Moneyball book, the line that I think is the most, and it's actually in the movie, is when Brad Pitt's talking to Jonah Hill down in the car garage, and Jonah says, "It's not about buying players, it's about buying wins." Well, think about that. You know, we're the U.S. military. We're the Yankees and the Red Sox combined in that Moneyball story. We buy players, and those players are called Ford, Columbia, F-35, B-21. And we believe that by simply buying those players and putting those players on the field, we will win every game, as opposed to saying, what does it mean to buy wins? Right? At the end of the day, it's buying wins. We're trying to win in conflict, not necessarily just have the best tools or the best players. And the value proposition, I think, of what cyber enables there is the thing that this community can advocate for. You know, we all know that, and we've all said it, you know, if we only had the money, if we just bought 1 less F-35 or 1 less DDG, think of what that money, how far that money could go in that space. You know, $3 billion in the cyberspace would go a long, long way. But, again, go back to the credibility side of all this. They're not ready to spend that money for whatever reason, because in some instances, the credibility of this space is still being established. Again, and I'm not saying that to criticize anyone in the room, because we, again, are the true believers. It's the reason you're at this conference. It's the reason I've continued to stay in the game after this, whether supporting the MCPA or what I do in my commercial world, which many of you who've gone from uniform to the commercial world are still in the game. Whether you've gone from uniform to government or uniform to contractor, you're still in the game, you're still on the field, you're still contributing to the mission. The third book, and this is the one where I think there's lots of other technologies that apply with the third book when we talk about execute against Japan. Once again, I'm going to take you back 100 years to the 1920s. Well, in the 1920s, the U.S. Navy was debating the value proposition of the submarine. Now, why is that? Because the way the Germans used the submarine in World War I, we thought as a nation was abhorrent, was a war crime. They were criminals. The fact that you were going to take a submarine, put it underwater, and engage merchant shipping, non-combatants at that time, to put warfighting material at the bottom of the ocean was, again, a war crime. It wasn't the way that we were going to conduct ourselves in conflict. And the U.S. in 1923 went to one of these naval conventions and said, we should abolish the submarine. We were the leaders of saying we should get rid of the thing that is arguably the weapon system that underpins the U.S. Navy right now, and will probably be the most efficient and effective weapon system halfway we go to, God forbid, we go to conflict with China in the South China Sea. But think about it. There was a time that we almost did away with that. Now, why were we going to do away with it? Because we didn't believe the way we were going to use it was a moral way to use it. Okay, so the 1920s, we're debating this topic. We're trying to figure out how we're going to use the submarine. From coastal defense, eventually we developed the Balo class, which was sort of a fleet submarine that could go out to sea and do war patrols. But the commanders of those submarines were very, very restricted in the way they were going to be allowed to use that platform. The platform was only designed or only being directed to engage the capital ships of our adversaries' navies. You're only going to use a torpedo, an aircraft carrier, or a large combatant battleship cruiser. You weren't going to engage merchant ships with it. More importantly, leading up to World War II, December 7, 1941, we said we were also going to conform to a thing called cruiser warfare. And what cruiser warfare was, is if there was a defined area of hostilities and if there was a belligerent that came into it, maybe a flag of another nation, you would stop that merchant, you would search it, and you would do a couple things. If it was carrying bread and bananas, you'd send it on its way. If it was carrying war-producing material, well, you had a couple options. Either turn it out of the zone, you'd take it as a prize, or you'd sink it. But if you were going to sink it, the crew was given quarter. The crew would be taken off. They could eat tea and biscuits on the fantail of whatever ship was going to put it under the bottom, and they could watch it go down, and then they would be put ashore at the earliest convenience of that skipper. That's the way we said we were going to fight the war. December 7th, 1941, attack on Pearl Harbor, 4 hours later, order issued to the Pacific Fleet that simply said, execute against Japan, the title of the book. And what that meant was conduct unrestricted submarine warfare on the nation state of Japan. And over the next 4 years, we sunk 5 million tons of Japanese merchant ships. So why do I use that as a backdrop? Well, I use it as a backdrop as technology can change very, very quickly. I think we all see it in this space more than others. I think we see it in this space most notably with the things that we've beginning to acknowledge that the Chinese are doing in our defense critical infrastructure. You know, when you look at things like DCI, the importance of it is just think if conflict were to go tomorrow and all of a sudden an idea, a concept like unrestricted warfare in cyberspace was enacted. Now, we're much more concerned about our adversaries doing that to us, and this is the reason why things like defense critical infrastructure and the security of our weapon systems and the things that underpin everything we do in the Department of the Navy and the Army and the Air Force are so important, because I think our adversaries have clearly demonstrated that this concept of unrestricted warfare in cyberspace is something they're very open to adopting, and they're already demonstrating they're moving down that path. Now, what I'm not saying is that we should adopt a similar way of thinking, but what I am saying is it's something that we need to think about, because then that would drive more impetus, more urgency to the things that we're all trying to do in the community, most notably around the defense of the things that underpin everything that we do. Again, it's about telling a story, because what I didn't say anywhere in there is any technical jargon. But that story can resonate with people that don't understand the technical jargon, and then they can learn it as they need to. Because I started my career working on F-18s, so I know how an F-18 works. But I don't know how to fly it. I don't know how to employ it. And I think a lot of the technology that we're creating, many of us in the room know how to use it, know how to deploy it, but how good are we at employing it as a weapon system or a platform or integrating it into other military operations? Again, I think that is the thought leadership that the MCPA, amongst other things, can be doing. But first and foremost, it's about championing all of us as a community. You know, we are one community. We have our, you know, our jabs. The Navy and the Army guys like throwing punches at each other. That's perfectly acceptable. I mean, the Air Force has only been around for a couple dozen years, so I mean, we haven't really made up good Air Force jokes yet. Sorry, yeah, I know, we're slower. Yeah, I know, we're slower. But again, think of the creation of the Air Force. It was born out of the bomber mafia idea, you know, in 1947, you know, transitioning from the Army Air Corps to the Air Force. Or was it 54? 47. So I got it right, 47. I'm not saying we're going to have a discussion about the possibility of a cyber service. We got Admiral Montgomery and Admiral White are going to be on the stage later today talking about that very thing. So I can't wait to hear that one. That's going to be a lively one. What are we doing on time? Maybe we'll go to break. Actually, you know what? Any questions? I'm happy to take a question or two while I'm up here, if at all interested. Wow, okay. All right, so we will do this. Oh, we got one.
You touched on the challenges of budget and models. Can you talk a little bit about where you, or approaches you found to be successful?
So when I was in the last job, I think when I would ask, I'd go, so with vendors or capability people would come to me, I'd say, look, you have to help me establish the credibility that the community is looking for, right? And a lot of that, you know, I think the credibility of the defensive side has been established. And I would argue that the government is probably putting as much money as they feel is necessary into the defensive side, most notably around initiatives like Zero Trust. That is off and running. But Zero Trust is really focused at sort of the enterprise IT side. You know, expanding that whole concept to include, again, everything that underpins what we do in the department is really that next magic trick to get them to understand that those same principles applied, not necessarily with the same technologies, but certainly the same ideas to things that are float and fly and underpin all of that by producing electricity and moving water ashore. Look, at that's all the attack surface now. And those are the things that we've got to take a much heavier look at defending and making sure they're survivable, not just secure. I think in our world, security goes so far. Survivability of those things is really, I think, what underpins most of that conversation, because, you know, we can lock the doors and windows of this building and it will be secure at the end of the day. But if I show up with a hammer, I'm getting in, right? Then you go from security to defense and, you know, the survivability concept. And the funny thing is that's a really easy concept for almost everybody in this room to understand. you know, because who've worn the uniform, who've done the drills, that have done damage control in the Navy or fire drills in the other services, or, you know, casualty drills in the Army. We all understand that. We understand that we live in a hostile environment, and there will be, the adversary is going to try and shoot down or sink or kill the people on the field, and we have all been trained to deal with that level of response. How does that sort of thought experiment carry over into the things that don't just have to be secure, but have to be survivable? And I think that's one of the things that this community could help push forward. All right, so with that, we got about 15 minutes, which I think the 15 minutes is going to allow people to get to their next events, take a bio break, get a cup of coffee, and move on. So, oh, and 2 more slides, sorry, which just lays out the rest of the day. So let's talk about the rest of the day very quickly. All right, the 3 tracks, we've already sort of referenced the 3 tracks. You have them all in your handouts. The 4 villages, which is new. Particularly, we wanted to make sure we called out the soldering village, which that is a new one, right? So it's not all ones and zeros, right? Sometimes you got to get the solder iron to do what it's got to do, because you got to connect those things that push the ones and zeros around. There's a hiring panel. So for people that are here that want it, if they brought resumes, you want to get things like that reviewed, we're going to be people that help you work through some of that. And then the 6 Bs. The barista, so there's a coffee bar. Thank you, Microsoft. I have to say that again, way in the back for fancy coffee. Brisket, so Mission Barbecue will be here for lunchtime. Make sure you get in line early. And every year, we see, Martin, make sure you get in line early. You complain about never getting something to eat, so you get in line early. Bourbon afterwards. We're doing a little bit of a bourbon tasting. Thank you for Tobacco Bar and Bourbon that's here. Bouncers, right, the new one, the yellow shirts, right? Those are the trolls. Those are the people that can help you get where you need to be. And this isn't DEF CON. This is a pretty benign crowd, so I don't think there's any riot control that needs to happen. We're all pretty manageable and follow directions. That's been our training. We all default to following directions. So I don't anticipate any problems there. Bucks. The scholarship, yes. So we'll be presenting a scholarship to a young member of a service member here today. That's one of the other things that the MCPA does. And band. We'll be having to be some music afterwards for all to listen to. So it's going to be a long but yet very fast day. Please mingle, get to know your peers. I'm here all day. Please reach out to me anyway. And again, there's a lot of the people that helped grow this community. Sean Healy, big brain here, who's going to be talking. I'm really looking forward to listening to his talk. Mudge is here, who's sort of like one of the godfathers of hacking. So we've got some pretty impressive members that are here. And with that, enjoy the day.